Welcome to this video, welcome to a brand new topic on this channel, Ionic 2, a framework which allows you to use your Angular 2 knowledge, which you probably use to create web apps, to build native mobile apps with it. These are apps running natively on iOS or Android devices. Sounds awesome? It is. This is what we're going to build in this first basic video. We're going to enhance this app in the next video of this mini-series here. This app allows us to add a new place, and for example, this could be the Spree, a river in Berlin, and then you can see it here on the front page added to this list. And with this, we could add another place, like let's say the Englischer Garten, a nice park in Munich. Now, these are places added, and whilst this might look like a very simple app, it covers a lot of the key concepts Ionic 2 offers, like how navigation works, how you add components, how you store your data, and how you can use Angular 2 to create such a mobile app. Now, if you want to learn much more about Ionic 2 right now, have a look at my full over 14 hours 5-star rated course on Udemy, which you can get with a huge discount by following the link in the video description. If you're not interested in this, well, just stick around and we will build this simple app and enhance it in the next video with some native device features, adding Google Maps to it and more. So let's dive into this. To get started with our Ionic 2 application we're going to build, we need to install the Ionic CLI. This is a tool which makes it easy to create new Ionic projects and manage them first. Now for this, you will need Node.js installed on your machine, simply because this CLI uses Node's package manager to manage the dependencies, and also Node.js itself to spin up a nice little development server which hosts your app. Might sound strange since it's a mobile app, but you will see what I mean in a second. So make sure that you have Node.js installed, and then you should install globally on your machine with npm install -g, you should install Ionic and Cordova. Now, Cordova is the framework which will handle the web app to native app compilation step, and Ionic is the framework which creates the web app, which gives you a lot of nice components and features to use, which makes creating a nice looking mobile app very simple. And it will also give you an easy tool to have an all-in-one workflow, which will compile your app, your Angular app, to a mobile app first, and then to a native app through Cordova, so you don't have to use Cordova directly. Now, on a Mac and Linux, you probably need to put sudo in front of this for this to work. On Windows, you probably don't. And I just enter my password, and now this will run through and will install both packages globally on my machine. Now I'll be back once this finishes, and then we're ready to create our first application, our Ionic project. The installation of both packages finishes for me, and as a next step, you should navigate into the folder where you want to locate your Ionic project. Now, I already am in such a folder. Make sure you go there too in the terminal. And then you can simply run Ionic start to create a new Ionic project. Then you specify your project name, and I will name it My Places, since this will be the name of the app we create here. Then you can also choose which template to use. I will start with a blank template. Other options would be tabs, to start with some tabs at the bottom, or side menu to start with a side menu. And then very important, add --v2 to make sure it's an Ionic 2 project and not Ionic 1. Now with this, you just hit enter. And this will now pull down the blank template and set up the project for you. Now, as it says here, this may take a couple of minutes, so I'll be back once this is finished too. Okay, so the app setup finished for me here, so next I can navigate into this newly created folder, and there we can simply run Ionic serve. And this will now do something very interesting. It will spin up a development server, or first of all, it will compile our Angular 2 code to a web app, and there is some basic Angular 2 code with which this blank project ships with. But then it will spin up this development server, and it should automatically open up a tab in your browser. This is the tab it should open. If it doesn't, make sure you navigate to localhost 8100 or whichever host it mentions down here manually. Now here you see your app And this now certainly sounds strange because you probably imagine that you create a native mobile app with Ionic. And you kind of do. You can now easily compile this to a mobile app, but right now it only is a web app looking like a mobile app and behaving like a mobile app. Though, of course, some features like the device camera will not be available here. It is a great mode for testing your app, and actually, it is the only mode I will use here because compiling it to a native app thereafter is really simple for development. Most of the time, this is all you need. Of course, you will need a real device if you want to test some built-in features like the camera. Now, it still looks strange though, having it like on the full width of a screen like this, that's not really how a mobile app looks like. Therefore, in Chrome, and I recommend Chrome for this, you can open up the developer tools, and there, if you click on this button, which looks like a mobile phone and a tablet, toggle device toolbar it says, if you click on this, you now view this app like running in a mobile device. And this works with any web page, not just with Ionic 2 projects. You can now choose your device here, like the iPhone 6. Make sure to reload the page if you do change it though. And you will now view it how it would look like on such a device. And it will also switch to the right theme, so material design for Android devices and the iOS design for iPhones. And this is pretty awesome, and as I mentioned, this is how I will develop this app, testing it in this view. Now with this, you see we got some boilerplate code or some text here basically. That's just the starting text the blank project ships with. We will of course change this to adjust it to our needs and to not work with that anymore. Now, as I mentioned, I want to create an app, a simple app, which allows a user to add some places, basically the place where he currently is at, and well, store it in this app. This is all I want to do, very simple. Now for that, let's open this app in an editor and start working on it. I opened the app in WebStorm, the editor of my choice. I still have this process, this Ionic serve process running here, and you should keep it running because it will automatically recompile your code and reload your web page whenever you change something. So very useful. Without this running, you won't see your changes reflected in your app. And actually, you won't see that app running in the browser here either. Now, with that, I opened it here and you see we got a couple of different folders and files. Now, I won't walk through them in high detail. Basically, the most important folder for us is the source folder, which is where we store our source code and where we basically write our app. Now the other folders, Node Modules manages our dependencies, Platforms manages the platforms we can build the app for, and you can add platforms through the Ionic CLI. You can find more information on this in the official documentation, to which you will find a link in the video description if you want to dive deeper into this. Plugins, that is important if you want to use some built-in device features. Resources, here you can store some icons and splash screens you want to use for your app when you create it. And the www folder holds your web app. So this in-between step between the source folder, which stores the Angular app, and the native mobile app created through Cordova in the end. So again, we'll focus on the source folder here. And in there, it's the app folder, which contains our main component, the app component, which gets started. And then we have this pages folder here too. Now, the pages folder is the key folder for an Ionic app, because an Ionic app basically consists of multiple pages. Now, what you see here is a page. It's the only page we have thus far, but it is a page. And therefore, it makes sense that we find this home component, as you can see if you click into the TypeScript file and it has this decorator. So this is why we can see this home component here in the pages folder. Each Ionic page is just an Angular component. It's just called page because logically Ionic 2, this framework, manages a stack of such pages for you. I will come back to this. So this is the component, the only component we actually see right now, besides the root component, which is only responsible for starting up our application and initializing the Ionic 2 navigation. The Ionic 2 navigation, that's something else which is very important. If you have a look at your app component template, you see that it only has this IonNav element, where we somehow seem to define some root page. Root page refers to the root page property in our app component here. And in the end, it stores a reference to this home page. So this somehow seems to be responsible for loading this home page at the start. And it does. It's important to understand how Ionic 2 navigation works. The Ionic 2 framework manages all the navigation for you, and it does so by managing a stack of pages. This means that you have a couple of different pages, in this case only one, but you could have more, and you always view the topmost page on this stack of pages Ionic 2 manages for you. And if you change a page, you simply push it on top of this stack, so then this will be the page you view. And of course you can go back by popping off a page, removing it from the top of the stack. And again, since you always view the topmost page, this means you will see the page below it. And this management of this stack of pages is done for you by Ionic 2. Now, that is all which happens here in the app component. This stack of pages gets initialized by implementing this built-in, this component here, IonView, with which Ionic 2 ships, which initializes this stack of pages. Therefore, we basically say, hey, the bottommost page should be the root page, or the page stored in this root page property, which again is this home page. So if we pop off all other pages, we have none right now, but if we were to have multiple pages, we could only go as deep as to the home page, which is our base page, our, well, home page of the app. Now, enough about these pages, let's add some new pages to see how we can play around with that feature. Now, I will add new pages through the Ionic CLI, and for this I will open up my terminal in my IDE. This is a normal terminal window. And there I can use the Ionic CLI again to create a new page by using the generate command. And I want to generate a page. And this page should be called new place, because I want to have a page where the user is able to add a new place to his collection of places. I will simply hit enter. And this will store, or will create, a new folder in the pages folder, the new place folder, which in the end simply will again hold my TypeScript file, the template, and if you wondered, this SCSS file of course holds the styling for this page. Ionic just happens to use SCSS, but you can write normal CSS code in there. One important note, you don't have to add it here to your style URLs. Property in your component decorator, like you would have to do it in a normal Angular app. Here it uses a different system. It uses the SCSS feature of nesting styles or selectors, and it always ships with this base selector, which is the selector of the page you created. Like here, page new place is just the selector of this page, as you can see here. And therefore any styles you write inside of this outer selector, and this is important, any styles which go in there will automatically be only applied to this page's template. So it's using SCSS instead of the Angular model of attaching styles. You could use the Angular way of doing it. I will stick to the built-in SCSS way. Now with this new page added in the template of this page, I will remove this comment at the top, and I will change the title to add place maybe, and in there, in the content, I will for now simply add a new paragraph where I say add a place. However, we will change this later on. Now we got a new page. It would be nice to view it now. So let's go back to our home page, our home template, and there in the template I will remove all the content and I will add a button. Now this button should say add a place, and I will change this later too. And when we click this button, I want to load this new page. And I actually will add a click listener for this and say on load new place, or whatever you want to say. And this method now, of course, needs to be implemented in the TypeScript file of the homepage. So there I will add this method, and I want to go to this new place page we just added. Important, make sure to also add it to your app module. The CLI does not do this automatically. So here we should add the new place page and also add the import at the top and add it to entry components. Now entry components, this might be something you don't know from your normal Angular app. There you rarely need entry components because this is an array where you inform Angular about the components you're about to load. Normally, you don't need to inform Angular because you either load components by adding them in another template through their selector or by loading them through the Angular router. Now, both is not the case here. We're not using the Angular router. We don't use it by default in an Ionic app. And we're not using this page by selector. Instead, as you will see in a second, we load it differently through a concept introduced by the Ionic 2 framework. And therefore, Angular is not able to detect that we're about to load it. And this is the single reason why we have to add it here in the entry components. We inform Angular, hey, this page is about to be loaded. You won't see it coming, but it will happen. Back to the it will happen thing. How does it happen? Back to the home TypeScript file where we added this method. I just mentioned that we will use a concept introduced by Ionic 2 to load a new page. And this concept uses this stack of pages. Now this stack of pages is managed through a navigation controller. And conveniently, it's already injected here by default because we use this boilerplate, this blank template, into our home TypeScript file. If it were not, make sure that you add this injection, give it any name you like, but make sure it's of type nav controller, which needs to be imported from Ionic Angular. Now with this injected here, what you can do is you can now access this nav controller, and there you have a push method. Remember that I told you that we have this stack of pages where you push new pages or pop them off the stack? Well, here we're on the push new pages part. I push a new page, and the page I want to push is my new place page. And you simply push a reference to this page, which gets imported here at the top. Make sure to add this import. With this in place, we should now see something if we click this button. So save this project. Keep in mind, we still have this Ionic serve process running, automatically recompiling our app. And therefore, we now see this button, and if we click the button, we indeed go to the new page, to our Add a Place page. And we also automatically get this back button, which we can press to go back. This is all managed by Ionic 2. This is this stack of pages concept, this navigation concept Ionic 2 introduces. Now, this button clearly doesn't look very pretty. We can change this by going back to the home template. And in there, I will add the Ion button directive, which basically tells Ionic 2, hey, treat this as a button and give it a nice look too. And by simply adding this directive, hey, this looks now much better. Now we still get the same behavior, but a nice looking button. So we get this possibility of going to the place. However, having this button right here is not super pretty. It would be nice to have a plus icon here in the menu bar at the top, which we could click and then go to the new place page. And once we are done adding a place, we're taken back to this main page here. And there we see, well, a list of all our places, for example. So, well, let's work on this. And to add such a plus, I will first of all remove this button here in my template, like this. And go to the menu bar, give this another title, like awesome places maybe. And then in the Ion navbar element, an Ion navbar is as all elements starting with Ion dash, an element, a component, Ionic 2 ships with. Now this is responsible for rendering the navbar, which is also the place where Ionic 2 will automatically add the back button. And here we get the Ion buttons element we can add, another built-in component. In Ion buttons, we simply add a button with the Ion button directive, and we give this any text we want, or in this case, not a text, but instead an icon. Now let's visit the Ionic 2 docs, which are some great docs, and you should definitely have a look at them if you're looking for a specific component, because as you can see, if you click on components, there are a lot of components. There also are some built-in icons, which you can find down here under Ion icons. And here you can see a list of icons you can use in any Ionic 2 app, like the add icon. which is the icon we need. So I will simply open this, and here we can also see how to use it. And let me just copy this code here. So we basically use this built-in Ion icon component. And back in my button, I will add this inside of the button element. So this button will now hold an icon. Therefore, I will add the icon only directive to the button, which will make sure that the styling is all right. Now we should have a plus button. And if we have a look at our running app, we indeed see it here. However, I want to have it on the right. The nice thing is, with the Ion buttons wrapper, we can add a end directive. We could also add start and end just define where it should be positioned. Now, end is not necessarily on the right. It depends on the platform this app is running on. For iOS, it will be on the right. If you want to force this to be on the right, you would have to add the right directive. But again, I will stick to the end directive to use the platform specific definition of where the end of this menu bar is. Well, and with this, you see it's on the right. Of course, nothing happens if I click it because I haven't added the click listener. So let me quickly add this again by adding, well, click, and then target the on, how did I call it? On load new place method we implemented a while ago. Though not here, but to the button. This is important, add it to the button, not to the icon. So if this reloads now, and we click on this, you see it's working again, but now through the plus icon in our menu bar. This is an important first step, and you already learned a lot about how navigation works and how you can switch between pages. Now let's add a very simple form which allows the user to define a new place, then store it in a service for now, and display it on the front page. We will improve this later on. Now for this, I will go to my new place HTML file, and in there, I want to render a form. Now this means I will add the form element, built-in HTML element, remove the action though, because I don't want to send a HTTP request. Inside of this form, I now want to have my form fields, and I will enhance this, but for now I only want to have a title. Now, since this is all I want, I will add an Ion item. This is a wrapper which will make sure that my title looks all right. And I will add an Ion label, where I will say title, and then I will add an Ion input. Again, if you want to learn more about all the available components Ionic 2 ships with, make sure you have a look at this components documentation. And there, under inputs, for example, you find how to style the inputs differently, which options you have, how to implement different types of inputs, and so on. Now I will go with a very simple one, where I will simply make this of type text, so like a normal HTML input, just, well, using this built-in Ion input, which acts as a wrapper, you could say. And if I now save this, let's have a look at our page. This looks all right. I can enter some information here. Of course, also want to add a button in this form. So below my Ion item here, I will quickly add a normal button with the Ion button directive though. And there I will also add another directive, the block directive, which will basically make sure that the button spans the full width of my view here. I will simply say create, or no, let's say add place. This button here should also have a type of submit, because it should in the end submit this form, whoops, here. So this is now the button allowing me to submit the form. And on this Ion input, I will now add a name, title, because it holds the title of this place, and ng model, because I want to use the template driven approach. This is vanilla Angular 2, you could say, has nothing to do with Ionic 2. I'm using the template-driven approach Angular 2 offers me when it comes to, well, doing my forms and reading the values in my forms. So this now retrieves, or allows me to retrieve, the title property. The form object in JavaScript is created automatically by Angular. All I have to do is I have to add the ng submit listener on my form object, also provided by Angular 2. or Angular in general. And on this listener, I want to execute the onAddPlace method. So since this is using the the template-driven approach, I also want to pass the form, and I can get access by placing a local reference on this form element and then setting this equal to ngForm. This will give me access to the form object created by Angular in the background. And I can then simply pass form value to this onAddPlace method. And well, as a little enhancement, I'll add the disabled property binding to my button and disable the button as long as the form is not valid. So by checking if not form valid. So this will disable the button, and I will add a new required directive here, or attribute to this ion input to add this required validator to my Angular form. So with that, I'll implement the onAddPlace method in my component. And there you see I already got a couple of boilerplates. So I will remove the comment here at the top. This was all added because we used the Ionic CLI to generate this page. I will remove this this hook here, this lifecycle hook, and I will also remove the two injected things here, features of Ionic, because I want to add them manually if I need them. So in onAddPlace, I know that I will get my form value, and this value will be a JavaScript object which will only hold a title which is of type string. I know this because my form has this title field and no other input. So with this, I will get this value object. Now I want to add this place. I want to store this place. And for this, I will create a service. I will create a new folder in my Ionic 2 project. I will name it services. And in there, I will create a new file, which I will simply name places. And now you could name it places.service.ts to follow this Angular naming convention. Or you could argue, since it is placed in a services folder anyways, you could omit the service part here. I will leave it in there, so I will simply hit OK. And now in this service, or in this file, I'll export a class named, not recipes, places service. And there I want to manage my places. Now I will add a places property, maybe make this private places. And now this should hold an array of places. And for now, a place should be a JavaScript object which has a title of type string. And again, it's an array of such places. At the beginning, it's an empty array though. So this part here is only the type definition. If you are confused what this means, again, I'm just defining that this places property should store an array of JavaScript objects which only have a title, which will be of type string. Now then I want to add a method which says addPlace, where I know I will receive a new place, which again holds a title of type string, which will access my places array and push this new place on it. And I will have a getPlaces method. Here I simply want to return this places, or maybe return this places slice like this, which will create a copy of this array and make sure that I don't return a reference to the same place in memory, but a brand new array object. So that this is really a private property, because otherwise we would be able to, well, change this places array we return here and change this places array in there too. We prevent this from happening by slicing it entirely and therefore creating a copy. So we get this places service. In app module, I should provide it so that we can access it application-wide. So in the providers array, I will add my places service reference and import places service at the top here. And now with this in place, a lot of places, right? With this in place, I will go back to my new place TypeScript file and inject this places service. So here, my places service of type places service, make sure to add the import, allows me to, well, be accessed here, places service, and call add place, and I will simply pass value, because again, a place right now is only an object with a title of type string. Well, this is just what value is. So this should allow me to store it in the places service. Of course, we also want to view it, and let's view it on our home page. Now, to view it there, to start simple, I'll go to my TypeScript file, inject my places service there too, places service, make sure to add the import. And with this injected, I now want to get all those places. Now retrieving them is not super simple actually, because if I were to retrieve them in the constructor, this would not be updated whenever we re-render the view. Now a better place to fetch our places might be ng-on-init, you could say. But there's still ng-on-init is only executed when this component is initialized. However, when we go to add a new place, this new place page is pushed on top of the stack, but the old place, the old page, the home page, is not destroyed. So it will not be recreated whenever we return to this page. That of course means that if our place has changed whilst we have been away on the add a new place page, for example, and then we go back, we won't see our new place being added be reflected in this home page. So this won't work either. Now, a nice solution would be to use one of Ionic 2's built-in hooks, IonView WillEnter. There are a couple of these hooks, and you can learn more about them in the official documentation under API. And there, if you scroll down to nav controller, you can, if you scroll down there too, learn more about how to use that controller, how to work with the navigation in general, and then how you can hook into specific events. For example, WillEnter is executed whenever this page is about to enter, no matter if it was still cached, still on the stack of pages, or if it was destroyed and recreated. So IonView WillEnter sounds like the perfect place to load our places. That means I will add my own property here, places in the home page, which again is an object which looks like this. And yes, you could create an interface and outsource it there. I will come back to this later. Now, for now, this is my places array. And this means that here in IonView WillEnter, which is executed whenever this page enters, I can, set my places here equal to the places I get from the places service with the getPlaces method. This should now ensure that whenever we view this page, we update it. Now with that in the home.html file, for now I will create a simple unordered list. We will improve this. And I will loop through all my places with ng4, so let place of places. And remember, this is just an object with a title property, so I can say place title here to output the title of each place. Again, we will improve this visually later. Now with this in place, a lot of place again, let's save this. Let's go back to the app and add a new place, test. Okay, nothing happens because we don't do anything else than adding it when we click this button. But if we go back, we indeed see it here. And if I add another place, the same is the case. So this works. Now remaining steps for this video are, I want to have this list look nicer, and I want to navigate back automatically when I click add place. Well, let's start with the navigate back part. A new place in this component. Here, when we add a new place, I want to go back to the home page. Well, I already told you that you manage your stack of pages by pushing and popping. Now, pushing is not what we need here. I don't want to push the home page. Instead, the home page is below our current page. So to get there, we need to pop the topmost page. So for this, I will simply inject my nav controller again. Give it any name you like, but make sure it's of type nav controller. And make sure to import nav controller from Ionic Angular up there. Now with this, I can simply use nav controller here and call the pop method to do just that, to pop the current page off the stack. And we should be able to see this if we let our app reload. Of course, all our places will be lost because we only store them in a service for now. If I add a new place, we're taken back instantly. Awesome. Now let's improve how this looks, how this list looks. And if we have a look at our documentation in the components, you see that lists are such a common thing. They have their own components we can use. And I will only create a basic list, but again, you can dive deeper into this documentation here and learn more about lists. So here we can see how to create such a list item, though this one would hold a clickable one. I don't need that, but the theory is the same. In my home template, I will remove the unordered list here, this HTML element. Instead, I will add the Ion list wrapper component shipping with Ionic 2, and I will add an Ion item in there. Now, this Ion item is what I want to replicate with the for loop. So let place of places should replicate this. And then in there, well, I will simply output place title. And again, consult the official documentation to learn how you can enhance this. You can create complex items with multiple lines and headings and much more. Again, I will keep it simple, have such a list. And if we now return to the app and add like a favorite place, like for example in Berlin, the Spree, that's a river in Berlin. You see, this looks all right. Now let's add a favorite place from Munich, which would be the Englischer Garten. English Garden, a big park there. Looks all right. We have our places here. We have a nice looking list. We got a basic application. Now, there are things we can improve though. We're storing the places in a service, which means whenever we reload the page, we restart the app, they will be lost. We should use some persistent storage instead. Additionally, since we're talking about places, wouldn't it be nice if we had Google Maps integrated in our app and could, well, let's say could get the place we're currently at using a native device feature, locating ourselves and then displaying this place on the app? That would be cool. So in order to implement this feature, I will dive into adding third-party packages using native device features and using native device storage in the next video on Ionic 2. Hopefully see you there. If you want to learn much more about Ionic 2, also consider the course I was mentioning at the beginning of this video. So, see you in the next video. Bye.